I came back mainly because my mum wasn't well, and she said, she couldn't see why, apart from being with my daughter, why I would want to stay on in England. And anyway, so I came back 1990. I was supposed to go work with Petronas. I'm not sure whether any of you work with Petronas. Yeah. And but before I got to Petronas, I got hijacked by a friend who worked in Renong, and I was wondering, what is Renong? I've never heard of this company before. So I went there, and it turned out to be a very interesting group, because they were about to 1990. They had just taken over United Engineers. They were building the North-South expressway, and if you know Renong, you know that Renong was doing almost all the projects that were going on in Malaysia at that time. It was, if you like, a crony company. all this is public, is it? But so that's why Renong was in a preferred position at that time. And if you go back those years to the early 90s under Prime Minister Mohamed then, he had a plan that he wanted to, as part of the NEP, create a new class of Bumiputra entrepreneurs. Yeah? And the formula that they used was to identify or handpick certain individuals, and then give these individuals opportunities to develop businesses. So Renong was one of them, and the person handpicked to run Renong was a guy called Halim Sa'ad. Yeah, he eventually became Tan Sri. So he was effectively my first boss in Malaysia. Yeah, so I didn't quite get to Petronas, so I had to explain to Hassan Marikan why I wasn't going to join Petronas after he had given me an offer letter. So that wasn't a nice thing to do, and but I felt that I had to make a choice as to whether I wanted to join an established group like Petronas, or something that was a bit more risky but looked a lot more exciting in terms of opportunities that could present itself. And I think, with hindsight, I probably would have done the same thing again, because Renong gave me a lot more opportunities to do things in a not so structured fashion. Whereas if I worked in a group like Petronas, then I can imagine I would spend X number of years here, X number of years there. I don't know, those of you working in Petronas, whether that's the case, but a large organization, there will be less flexibility in terms of of your career path. Whereas for a group like Renong, which was fairly new, there were a lot of opportunities available if you were keen to volunteer yourself or avail yourself to what was available. So that was what happened. And in Renong, I worked initially in what they call the Gestapo office. This is it was set up by a lady called Peggy Ong, who was an ex-partner of Pricewaterhouse. So what Halim Sa'ad had done is he had brought some of these professionals in, told them to set up what they call a group management office, because he was he had a lot of businesses under him, and he needed a group of people to help him monitor, coordinate, and make sure that the whole group would be properly organized. So this company, which was called HBN Management, HBN stood for Hati Budi Nominees. Yeah. HBN Management was the first company I joined when I came back to Malaysia in 1990. And the role of that company was basically to help Halim Sa'ad run the Renong Group. Yeah. So my first job was to help write reports on the various companies in the group, which included at that time companies like United Engineers, Faber Group, Cement Industries Malaysia. Some of them still exist today. Or the company, of course, Plus, the highway company. So he was an interesting boss to work for, because he was very, very strict, and if you know people who worked in Renong, they would tell you that almost everyone was terrified of him. He was actually a very nice guy, but his way of managing was managing through fear. And of course, having come back from England, where the culture was like totally the opposite, it was quite a big of a culture shock. But what happened within the Renong group was that everyone really had to know everything at their fingertips, because if you didn't, he'd literally bite your head off. I mean, there were cases when so we would have this like off-site once a year, or business planning kind of meetings, right, where you're supposed to present. No, I think there were quarterly meetings where you're supposed to present the results of the group. So there would be people from the companies, the subsidiary companies, who would come to the meetings, literally not having slept the whole night, because they would be so terrified of presenting to him the next day. And I think on one occasion, one guy actually fainted. Probably because he was very tired, but also from the shock of being asked the question, I think. So so the culture then was you had to make sure you knew all your facts, and because Halim Shah had this group of people that was giving him all the information, right? People like me. So he knew a lot about those companies, and he could literally ask anything. So if you were working in one of the companies and he asked you a question about the company, he didn't know it, then and he knew it, that would be quite bad news for that person. Yeah. But that was the style, and until today I still admire him as probably one of the most effective Bumiputra managers that I have ever worked for. Yeah, I mean, his style sucks, but it was effective. Yeah? I suppose he worked out that maybe in our country, in our culture, people may be a bit more laid back and complacent and all that, and unless you're very, very strict with them, they may not do what they're supposed to do. So anyway, it worked in terms of getting things done. Whether the people were happy, probably not. They were stressed out most of the time, so probably not good for their health. So the burnout was probably quite fast. And people who worked for Renong included Che Khalid, at Tenaga. He was one of those who worked a long time under Halim Saad. So he obviously managed to survive. I didn't work very long. After 5 years, I said enough. I couldn't quite get used to that kind of culture. But in the meantime, at Renong, I was quite fortunate, because initially I worked in this company called HBN Management, I think for about 2 years, and then I moved to Faber Group. And then after Faber Group, I went to Time Engineering, and then after Time Engineering, I went back to Renong Berhad, which was the holding company. I became the COO of Renong Berhad in, I think, sometime 94, 95. Now, I mean, that looked good, but